Thank you for joining the Soul Sisters Cafe. All right, everyone, this is the very first episode of Soul Sisters Cafe podcast. I'm Jordan Blaquera, and I'm here with my closest friend,
Ting! My bestie, Tracey Gritz here.
That would be Tracey Gritz. And before we go any further, we want to tell you why you might be interested in this podcast, just to give you an overview. So take it away, Tracey.
Okay, so for those of you who have ever experienced self-doubt, lack of confidence, people-pleasing, I have that one, that t-shirt, I'm a please-aholic, I have been a please-aholic, family member with addiction. Elderly parents, taking care of somebody who has a major illness, MS, Alzheimer's, those are ours. Relationship struggles, friendship struggles. We have been friends for a very long time and have had friendship struggles. Self-critical, very self-critical, had that. If you have ever experienced fear, worry, weight, judgment of the self or others, if you've ever experienced any of those things, then Jordan, tell us.
Well, you might be interested in a podcast because that's the topics we're going to be talking about and how we walked our way through them and how we're walking our way through them on a daily basis. And also you might be interested if you've been a seeker, if you've read a lot of self-help books, transformational tools and teaching, and you've looked at your thoughts, you want to be more self-loving. You want to bring more love to the planet. You know that you're part of the creator, but you have difficulty remembering that sometimes, and also extending that grace to other people and seeing that in the people in your lives. Like your relatives, like the people, your spouses and significant others. And you have challenges and difficulties there, but you know that you are an aspect of the creator, and you've been seeking in many ways a more enlightened way, a more truthful way, a more loving way, a more joyful way. And you also want more inner peace, more inner calm. And you know there's more to life than just trying to grab the brass ring, compete with the Joneses, try and get as much as you can, as many toys. You know that you can't take it with you. And yet you are living this human life and you're trying to contend with all of that and sort all of that out. You might be interested in the Soul Sisters Cafe podcast.
Yes, because in this podcast, we do it with fun. So here's the thing. We're really funny.
She's setting the bar so high. Oh my gosh. Okay, tell them we're boring. No, tell them we're boring.
The truth is, we think we're funny. Not so much.
Tracy thinks we're funny.
I do. I think, okay, we'll qualify that. So, but so we do have a really good time. So we take these topics, and each topic is real for us. It is something we've gone through, we've experienced. It's live. We are living our spiritual journey out loud all the time. We are works in progress. We do not ever pretend to be masters. We will be vulnerable. We will show our vulnerabilities and where we fall and where we stumble, because all those are very important to our learning. And we want to share those things. So everything is done that is what we talk about is like real-time stuff.
Things that might have just happened to you the morning, or to us, the morning of the podcast. Yeah. Like this morning, it was discovering the stench of poop in my mom's room, who lives with me because she has Alzheimer's and cannot live on her own. And how do I master that? That was wildly inconvenient. I did not enjoy discovering that this morning. And so then that can become, how do I walk through that? How do I remember her divinity, my divinity, and walk it in real time?
Totally. And one of the great things also is we are very committed to our own spiritual growth. It is something that we study, it is a daily practice for both of us, and it is no joke. We live this stuff. We question. We deep dive into our own selves privately, so that we can make sure that we're practicing it day in and day out. Where we fall, where we don't fall. So we are definitely committed to it. We study it, and it is a daily practice for both of us. And the other thing is that I know we have progressed. There has been a beautiful progression in both of our lives that I think is really important to our flavor because we have pre-Tracey and Jordan many years ago, 35 years ago. I was a mess. And who I am today
she was a mess, people.
I was totally, watch out, back it up.
Before there was a hot mess, she was a hot mess.
I was. And now I get to live this life of freedom. And when it's painful, there's freedom in the pain because I know it's a moment in time and I know how to navigate. I know I will navigate through those waters as well as with Jordan. So that is our flavor. I would say it's super real. We have a great time and we also share just about everything.
Just about. So now why don't we introduce ourselves a little bit, what the challenges we've faced, the lives that we've lived. Let's see. Let me give you a little bit. Well, we've been friends for over 30 years. We met.
I know we don't look like it.
Right. We were just baby. We were in diapers. We went to the same high school. We wound up working at the same shoe store. I remember being in modern dance, right? We weren't friends then, but I know you were in that class. And then we wound up where the friendship really took off was working in the shoe store where she was a manager. Mm-hmm. And we were totally opposites. You were like big feathered poofy hair, very girly, so acrylic nails,
and
big bright colors, and dresses and feminine and frou-frou. Oh my God. And all about the guys. And I was like, I had a chip on my shoulder that was humongous. I was more dark. I was the thrift store shopper. I was wearing like pillowcase skirts that I had made, torn
army boots.
Was I torn sweatshirts? I don't even know if I wore makeup then or not. I don't know. But so I was that person.
She was that.
I was that person. And so Tracey,
and I was like, this person, like, oh my God, that's so cool.
I'm so curious. She will be my project. Jordan will be my project. She will like me. She will like me. And so
I will win.
Yes. And that would come out many years later in Pictionary, Games of Pictionary. So competitive spirit, right?
Yeah.
I will win. She is a mean, laser tag player. Tracey Gritz. Is a mean laser tag player.
Crazy.
I wanted to win, but she won that one. She was quite good. So, our relationship has developed. So we started out as like single women and I've been with my man for 34 years. You've been married for how many years?
Well, we've been together for 33.
33. I was in the delivery room for her first child. Would have been for the second, but she moved across the country, and I will never forgive her ever, ever, ever for that. Sorry. But so I started out like creative. I wanted to be a singer. I was a singer-songwriter. Went through different jobs. We met in Los Angeles, and then I moved to Central California. And some of my challenges, I had a single mom. My father was not around that much. I thought that meant a lot about me. I'm not lovable to my father. I'm not lovable. I'm not likable. Single mom. Just seeing her belief system, which is very fear-based. She took that responsibility of having a child and was fearful a lot of the time that she wouldn't make the rent and how would she provide for us. So a lot of fearful thinking and mindset that I've worked through and I'm still working through. And now she came to live with me a year and a half ago. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, became abundantly clear that she could not live alone. And so now she lives with us. And Alzheimer's alone is a mass. Thank goodness I had all of my reflection and my journey so far and these spiritual tools to address the challenges that I'm facing with her. Who is it to be a daughter when your mother forgets that she ever had a daughter? When you lose an identity, when I've lost my mother figure, when I'm experiencing grief, when I'm finding poop in places I don't want to find poop.
We shouldn't have to find poop ever. Right? Let alone ground into a
One
form.
hopes. I do have preferences. my personality does have preferences, but then there are some requirements for growth. You'll hear about that in episode 2 or 3. So, and weight, my mom was overweight for my entire life of knowing her. I think she started gaining weight about 10 years old. And I was thin until I was about 7th grade. And then I started overeating and, for boredom, for emotional reasons. And that has been a huge learning curve, self-transformational learning curve to be willing to love myself under all conditions, to truly challenge unconditional love of myself, to be more self-loving. I have been incredibly self-critical and had dark periods, so much so that one time Tracey had to say, I'm worried. I think you might be depressed. And so I would wake up with the worst self-talk ever. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm going to do it all again today. As soon as my eyes or my awareness that this is a new day started, it was just the self-loathing would start. And I would use so many things as a reason why, how I did my jobs, what my weight was, what I ate, blah, blah, blah. That self-doubt, that lack of self-confidence, lack of self-worth have been big challenges for me. That was a challenge in my relationship too, to just believe that I was deserving of that relationship. Extremely challenging. That's kind of me. So I'm facing all of those things I'm a coach. I became a coach, a master coach. So I think a lot about my thoughts, how my thoughts are creating my reality and creating my feelings, and what is my perspective. And I do believe that, as the Course in Miracles says, a miracle is a shift in perception. So I'm always looking at my perceptions and working to be open to a shift, to either consciously create that or be gifted with that. So what would you add to my story? You have witnessed it for many decades.
I've witnessed the transformation. So I know, again, Jordan from high school, who was, just dark. Dark would be a really great word. And now light would be a great word. And this is one of the things I said to her earlier today. It's like, it's just light. You're just like light. It's lovely. And so I knew Jordan, just the stuff she would say. And I would think, oh my God, that's terrible. When she would share it with me, and just to how much she believed all these horror, belief,
100%
and pure. Right. In what seemed to be a fact to her. And Jordan and I really did bond for many, 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 many years on victimhood kind of. And so the fantastic thing is to see this person who was a victim to many things, blamed other people for how she felt, which of course I did too.
I just have to interject here. If you spot it, you got it.
I know, exactly. And now, none of that. I mean, that's the cool thing, is that this darkness and this seriousness and this, you have to understand, and if you we have to be friends this way, this is the way, and this, I mean, just in life in general, her with her significant other, and again, I spotted, I got all this too, but to bear witness to the transformation of that, to somebody who loves openly, thinks, feels, knows the divinity that she is. It's like night, really. It is night and day.
That is true.
Didn't happen overnight.
Night and day did not happen overnight.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I like that.
That is
true. That.
See, you just get more of that on the Soul Sisters podcast.
Yeah, and I will say it would be dumbfounding to me, because this was so factual, if I thought I'm a loser or, all the negative things that I thought about myself, and Tracey would see something different. Thank goodness for friends, right?
Yeah.
Tracey would see something different and I would be like, what? Like, no. What the way you see it is a no. That's not the way it is. And Tracey would ask me and say, is that really what you think? You really think that's true? Whatever it was. Like, I'm a loser.
I was incredulous. I was like,
she was incredulous and I was incredulous right back at her. But I do remember your incredulity. And it was like, what? Really? Which is to say this prison that I'm living in, that I think is factual and there is no choice and there is no other way to see it. Tracey was seeing it a different way. And, I
was seeing the Jordan that is today, right?
Yeah. But I can see now that it's just like, right. We had a different belief system. It was just totally, you had your thoughts about me.
Yeah.
And I have my thoughts about me. And we both think they're factual.
Yes. Right.
Totally.
So true.
Anywho, Tracey's been a lovely mirror, and to have someone with different, higher, lovelier, lovinger points of view about you has been really great. That's been a beautiful gift from Tracey.
There have been other gifts.
Yes. Other requirements.
Give, never take, always give.
Yeah. So how about you? Tell them about your arc.
So I was single. My mom was a single mom. Very similar story to Jordan, just different kind of, I like this word, out picturing how my mom was as a single mom. It was definitely about, for her, that the kids behaved a particular way, and that it was like what people thought. There was definitely a lot of what other people think. Not talked about, but it was just shown. It was role modeled to me that's important.
So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I became a massive please-aholic. Wanted people to like me and was happy, sunshiny, and just really went that way with it all, with the undercurrent of my belief, I realized later on in life, was that I was born with a defect. And that defect was that I was unlovable. That's how I was born. I came into this world unlovable. I didn't consciously know that until, 8 years ago. But that was what I was operating with underneath the surface. So therefore, in order to be lovable, I had to, do a lot of things and blah, blah, blah. So those
to compensate for that defect?
Yes.
Supposed defect.
Right. I had to do what other people wanted because then I would be at least likable.
Got it. Wow.
Right.
That's a lot of work for a lot of decades that you did that.
But, it's like, it was a weight.
Can relate.
It was repetition. Yeah. That just was my reality. I just did that. That's just how I did it.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of pain, as you know, from trying to be somebody other than who you are. Very painful existence. I do have 2 sons who are young adults. So right now, one's 27 and one's 24. And they have been massive teachers in my journey for sure. We have, in our family, they have struggled with addiction, struggled with... I would call it oppositional defiance stuff, like over the top. Most parents never have to walk the places that my husband and I have had to walk with our boys, for sure. And it was beyond what most parents have to go through, unfortunately. We are at the other side, but we may not, who knows. So I do understand the raising kids, for sure.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way that was very, very victim, very codependent. That's the way I was married, also for the first, Larry and I have been together, married for 30 years. And of those 30 years married, I would say 20 were steeped in really not being happy. Really trying to put on a good front, trying to stay married because of my kids, but never feeling really in love. Moments of it, feeling moments of happiness, had good friends, all this stuff. And the last 10 years, hands down, fairy tale deliciousness. Same man.
Same
woman.
I think
that is, it's the same woman, right? Same woman, same
people.
Man. Yeah. So I think as we talk about kind of who I am and a little bit of my journey, that I think is super important. That has been a very important teacher, as my boys have. My mom, I live in North Carolina. I'm from California. And we moved her here 2 years ago. She has MS and it significantly declined. So I spend a lot of time. I'm her executive assistant, which is a very fun way of saying I'm her prefrontal cortex, her bookkeeper.
Exactly.
I manage all her care. You name it. I take care of it. I'm in her prefrontal. Yes.
Yeah, the prefrontal cortex, which resides right behind the brain. It's like your executive functioning assistant. Yeah. You know, those executive functions, decision making.
Right. So we both do our parents' executive function thinking for them, as well as everything else. We wipe, we do things. Jordan has more poop stories.
That's right. That's
Lots of those. And just navigating all of that too, as we've come to be able to navigate it in love, which is very lovely, has not always been that way. And I know for me and for Jordan, one of the ways where we have always bonded is through our spiritual journey. There's always been a beautiful thread between us of the spiritual journey from like day one. We were reading like Conversations with God, A Return to Love, Marianne Williams, like way back, 30 years ago, right, Jordan?
I would say probably from Summit.
Yeah.
And that was where you met your man.
Yeah. So that's 30 right there. 30.
That's right.
30
that's
years.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
We were totally into that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, one of my obsessions a little bit has been, how do I live the life of my soul?
Mm.
How does that happen? I want to know more about that. I want to sign up for that class. So that I would say part of what Jordan and I do through Soul Sisters Cafe is that we do walk and explore and step into the life of our souls, because I know we were not living it 30 years ago. Right.
No.
And yeah, I think that's it for me. I know I had anything that I'm missing there? Oh, my dad was an alcoholic. Does that count?
And was your stepdad a recovering one?
My stepdad was a recovering alcoholic. So my mom remarried when I was 16, which was excruciating because she loved him, it seemed like, way more than us.
Yeah.
She wanted to please him because way more than her kids, it seemed to me at that time.
Right.
Now I understand it. Did I miss anything, Jordansky?
I don't know. Your business? Your career?
Oh,
journey?
yes. So I was, in California. I mean, we had retail stores. Here in North Carolina, I was a productivity consultant for 10 years, which was very beautiful. Loved it. And what I had come to realize is that you can be super productive, but if you were not in alignment with the work and life, really with your soul, the path of your soul, no matter how productive, how much productivity, how much I helped you be organized and productive, you still were not going to have a fulfilled life. And so I realized I was kind of put in the cart thinking that the productivity would help the life, but it's aligning to the truth of who we are, to our soul. And then the productivity could have been a massive bonus. So I ended up just totally shifting away from productivity, which was which is a big step, but part of my journey, part of my growth.
Part of it. So for me, watching Tracey, it's interesting because thinking about the summit.
I'm a little afraid.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Right,
I didn't think of it like the spiritual journey from the beginning, but Summit, which was personal self-help workshops, came pretty early after a couple of years. That was like early 20s or something.
And A Return to Love. Didn't we do A Course in Miracles, Return to Love together, kind of?
I don't remember that at all. I remember reading that thing for sure.
This is so
but
cool,
I don't
because
remember
Jordan has memories of like this dance class and this and that, and I'm like, I don't remember that, but I remember. I swear we talked about that stuff, but I'm right, you're wrong.
right. But clearly, I mean, we ended up here. I just remember it later on, but that's just neither here nor there.
Jordan.
Say what?
When do you remember it?
I think I remember, like, you would be like, well, there was a woman that Marilee or something, and you did a reading with her, and I'm like, who is this woman? Who is this Tracey woman who has readings? Like, that's my jam. I didn't feel like you were so far afield. So like personal transformation and like your thoughts and whatnot, but readings, which are pulling in other energies, like I didn't get that about you. And so, yeah. So
then I hired Victoria for...
That was later.
Yeah, later. Right, that's true. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So anyway, but that's early child. So, 25 years ago. So I guess it's not so far. Anyway, but who I saw was a very, you said that if judging was an Olympic sport, you would have won a medal. And that is true. Like that. And so her mom is snarky, but Tracey she's a little snarkity snark. And what's fascinating for me is like, I loved you anyway. So, like I could have told, I'm like, that's not cool, but that's Tracey. That's fine. Tracey. I love her. And, I just accepted that. Like I accepted that piece. And, but she would. So for example, if we were in Venice, California, which is A+ people watching material, there are people who look all kind of different ways, and on the fringes and pushing the boundaries of what standard, quote unquote, standard and acceptable is. And, those opinions would just fly out of your mouth.
Oh my God. I had an opinion on anything and everything.
She really did.
I did.
Anything and everything. And people, and then just throughout life, people who were different and had different ways of life and tattoos.
How could they wear that? What are they thinking getting dressed like that?
Yeah. To becoming this woman who like walks around with her heart chakra open. And I'm like, when did that happen? 25 years later, when you're going around, I just love everyone. I can feel my heart is so open. It overwhelms me. I just see the beauty in them. And I'm like, oh my God, like there she is. And she's made this massive, journey. And then also like people pleasing. The thing about it was your people pleasing was awesome when you were pleasing me. But then if her people pleasing, she was pleasing some other friend or her husband or her children, and it impinged on her ability to please me and the way I wanted Tracey to be, then there was a real problem. Then it is just so not cool that you're people pleasing. Yeah. And I saw that, but I also saw the trait, and I'm so glad for you, which was just a requirement for growth for me to realize that Tracey does not exist on this earth to please Jordan.
And my husband thought I existed to please him, and my kids thought I existed to please them.
Of course.
Crazy.
That's the way I felt about my partner and my mom. Yes.
Of course.
And so now I am here to please me and to raise to the frequency of love and
I just got chills.
Live from there. And so I've watched Tracey do that journey, and I know that was so difficult for her, and then I just had to surrender at some point. Okay, she's not pleasing me, which none of these other people are. David and my mom, no, they're not pleasing me either.
No.
And this is not the way life operates. And they did not come to earth to revolve around me. Yeah. And, so then I started doing my journey of realizing that, the truth of that. But I know that was something that she really struggled with. And I would see it. I could see the conflict, and to see her come through that journey is pretty amazing to see where you've come from. So it's, and our lives have just so dovetailed. The most recent example being that Tracey's mom had a massive UTI that precipitated her mother coming to be under her care and live in her state 2 years ago. Whereas for my mom, had a massive UTI different life-altering disease, Alzheimer's for my mom, multiple sclerosis for hers. But then a year and a half ago, my mom comes to live with me. So we're having this life transition that we're sharing, how we're approaching it, how we're dealing with it. And that's just happened with jobs in our early 20s and just different periods of life where we're like, look at that. We're dealing with that same thing, or we're dealing with moms not being the way that we want them to be. And now we're dealing with moms having a major illness. And now that we're dealing with them coming to live with us, and we're dealing with this in our relationships, and we're dealing with this in career. And so we would just kind of dovetail over the years. Anything else you want to add about you?
I don't. I just want to touch a little bit because I know mine was so much of judging and people pleasing. Those were totally, I would definitely have identified as that. And the difference today, which is so much freedom, but freedom for you, freedom for other people, right? You guys, people get to experience that. And the reason I'm saying this is because when you were just, having the idea of like, I'm not worthy, monster. I'm
a monster in relation to my mom and being her caregiver. I should be a certain way.
Yes. And so here's Jordan her mother lives with her, has Alzheimer's. What she does for her is unbelievable. This is one of those moments where I'm incredible. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's true.
And she's thinking she's a monster. Like her belief is that she's a monster. And I'm
a monster, not my mom's a monster. I'm a monster.
Sorry, Jordan is a monster because could she be doing this? Could she be doing this? And I am thinking she pretty much walks on water with Jordan, with what she's doing. It's unbelievable for Jordan to go from that person that I have known for most of our friendship to knowing the truth of who she is. She's a light in this world, and that she is worthy of all the love that she is love. To see this transformation is profound. I mean, that's a great example of your mom and I'm a monster. And me just going, I'm like, huh?
Right.
I don't even understand that. That's like saying 2 + 2 is 6. Like in evidence, in the physical evidence, it looks completely like, how could she even think that? So anyway.
Yes.
It has been a journey.
It has been a journey. And I wanted to mention one other journey with you, which is in the early part of Tracey's relationship with her husband. They were arguing fools. And they would argue in front of David and I was so uncomfortable. And it's like 2 type A's and just 2 stubborn people and 2 strong points of view. And boy, the clash. And then they parented together. That must have been fun.
Henceforth, 20 years of, oh my gosh, what the hell?
Right. So she's been through a thing or two in her relationship, and to see her feel like it's fairy tale deliciousness. I love my man and I support him and all of this stuff. It's quite a transformation as well. So given that, the purpose of our podcast, do you want to speak to that? Why we decided to?
No, I want you to.
Oh, okay. So the purpose, we've been through a lot. Our friendship has been through a lot. We've learned a lot. We're still learning. We're still transforming. We're still evolving. And really what our mission and our hope for this podcast is to be an example of what's possible, is to be an example of possibility, of bringing in the light to something that can feel as devastating and painful as Alzheimer's, that can feel as devastating as a child in addiction, and sitting in a car with their friend / drug dealer and not knowing if your child is going to be alive, after, and knowing that your child was resuscitated, back to life, and being willing to let that child live their life. And for me, realizing that I am not what I do. I am not what I weigh. I am not how I look. I am divinity. We are all divinity. And a relationship on the brink of divorce, all of these things, there's so much suffering in the world. So we have found slices, pockets, ways to inner calm, peace. Oh my gosh. Love, the frequency of love, living from that much higher frequency. Not 100% of the time. We have our trials and tribulations. We know that we will have tests and spiritual exams to move us to the next level and the next grade. And we talk about that in podcasts 2 and 3 when we define a lot of the vocabulary that we're using. But we want it to be an example of what's possible. And as we work to align with our divinity and to act from that place in our lives and in our interactions with people and in our goals and what we do and work on achieving in our lives, we wanted to share that so that if you're struggling in any way that we are, and that you will experience some relief as well. And everything that we talk about can be applied to, if you're not in a relationship, if it's not like a romantic relationship, it could be a relationship with a friend or a relationship with a boss. Or if you don't have children, as I don't, I still learn from Tracey and what she goes through with her children. And she learns from me, not having children, or having a cat, having a pet. Go ahead.
Well, I think also it's how do we navigate the pain or the chaos? It now is for me, and I know for you so much, that we can experience the pain in freedom. We can
experience the freedom in pain.
I'll say the challenge. I can experience, you can experience a poop, cleaning up poop mashed into the carpet, and I can experience, a kid who's going through some stuff, some serious stuff, but always in the space of I'm safe. No matter how challenging, how difficult some of the things that happen to us are, I know for me, I know for you, that now what I get to experience is I'm always safe. It's always okay, no matter what it is. Overdose. That's like the worst I can think of right now. Mm-hmm. I can navigate that. You can navigate your mom not knowing who you are. Mm-hmm. Thinking you're mommy.
Right.
Very painful.
That I'm her mom. Right.
Yes. Jordan is her mom. And we can navigate this now in a space of love for ourselves and honor ourselves through it and feel safe through it, because we know we are going to move through this with love and kindness to the extent that we can.
Right. And that's what we're going to be reaching for.
Yes.
If nothing else, if not achieving, reaching for that and knowing that that's a possibility.
And we have so many examples of it being possibility. So we know it's possibility. It's just figuring out, okay, so not figuring out, but work it. That's what this is for. Soul Sisters Cafe, that's what it is for. So when we are going through these things, when you're going through these things, when our friends are going through these things, that we are a possibility for each other.
And there are many teachers, many authors, many workshop leaders who have paved the way for us and taught us many of these concepts. Our hope is to be that for someone who is resonant with us and can hear our humanity and can relate to it and benefit from the tools and the concepts and the insights and the shifts in perception that we've benefited from. So that's our offering in this podcast. And
beautiful.
Our offering to express ourselves and shed some light and help others be in the light that they already are.
Yes. And we always do this from our heart to yours, from our heart to everybody's heart. It is always done heart to heart.
All right. So
faux show.
If that speaks to you, feels good, calls to you in any way, please subscribe to the podcast and continue listening in episodes 2 and 3. The next 2 that are coming up, we define the vocabulary and the language and the concepts, 6 key concepts we use to navigate. And we want to make sure that it makes sense. And if you want to learn more, check those out. Because if those speak to you, then probably should keep listening to the podcast.
And one more thing. Yeah. If what we do here, if our Soul Sisters Cafe aligns for you, resonates for you, we'd love to have you share it. To us, it's important for everybody to know for everybody not to know, but to have the opportunity to have the inner peace that is their birthright. So if this resonates, float your boat, whatever you want to say, then please also do pass it along.
Share it with someone you think would. It would float their boot as well, as they say in Canada. All right. We hope you'll listen along. It's been great having you here. We'll see you and talk to you on the next podcast.
Bye.